So guys, just a little bit about me and my background. So I was an educator for about 12 years there, full time. And within that season of my life, I was also a curriculum designer at a couple private Christian schools. I actually have some students in this room that were my students at one point in time. If you're one of my students, go ahead and just give me a round of applause. There's like 2. But with that, I was one of the courses I taught was something called apologetic theology. And so apologetic theology is the way that you defend your faith on a theological standard. And so I created the curriculum during this course. And what we would do is the first semester, we would dive into the existence of God and who God is. And so I developed this class based off of the scientific understandings and the evidence that prove the existence of God. So that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. We're not going to go through a whole semester of curriculum. That would be way too much and overwhelming. And we're not going to go through the eight-part series that I created, but we're going to go through the very initial one. And what that is that really dives into the universe. And what do we see in the universe? And what does the universe have to show us in terms of who a creator is and what a creator has given us to be able to observe? So what we have is, let me go ahead and go to the next slide for you. I hope. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Perfect, there we go. So every aspect of our life, we have the opportunity to observe design. We can see design if you put on that lens in your forefront, and you're able to start looking at it through that perspective and looking at different design principles. So my goal for you today is rather you have never believed in God and you think that it's a scientific impossibility for there to be a God, then this message is for you. Or maybe you have been raised in church from day one and you kind of just drawn away from your faith. And you're like, I'm curious and I just don't really know. Is there a God that sees who I am? Is there a God that actually knows me? What is life all about? Then this message is also for you. Or maybe you've been never fallen away from your faith, and you've always been in tune with the Lord, and you've been following. Well, this just will help you reaffirm your belief system and understand that you do, in fact, have a creator. Because what it boils down to is a faith-based argument. It's always reliant on faith and what you're going to put your faith into. Rather, you're going to believe that nothing can create something, which is technically an evolutionary impossibility, or you're going to believe that something has created something else. So what are you going to actually put your faith into? And what is that going to look like? Colossians 1:16 says, "For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, rather thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him." That's very important. Everything was created by him and for him. Everything we're able to see and we're able to observe is very unique to our perspective, and it's very unique to us being a human being. That we are very unique in the aspect that we have the intelligence and the intellectual capabilities of being able to observe things around us. Every other species that we know of doesn't have that rationality. We have something called metacognition. We have the ability to think about thinking. We can think about our thoughts right now. Every other species is instinctual. They do based off of their instincts. We have the free will and the freedom to make choices based off what we want to think about. It's crazy. You start thinking about it like that. So what's actually taking place right now at this exact moment in time? I'm standing up here and I'm speaking to you and you're listening very intently. You're looking and you're trying to understand exactly what I'm saying and where I'm going with what I'm talking about. You think about what's actually taking place, and I'm inhaling air right at this moment. And I'm taking that air and I'm exhaling it. I'm exhaling it up through my esophagus. And it's going into my voice box. And my voice box has different muscles in it that are contracting and expanding in precise motions. They're taking this air and they're going into my mouth. And my mouth is correlating what I'm trying to say with my brain. And it's moving my lips in precise movements. It's opening and closing my jaw in precise patterns. My tongue is molding these sound waves that are then able to amplify out of my mouth into a modern day piece of technology called a microphone that's wirelessly transmitting to an amplifier, for those sound waves to be blasted throughout this room. So then those sound waves move like in a bubble form, blasting off of these walls, then going down into your perfectly designed ears that are made to capture sound waves, hitting your eardrum, then they're being transformed into your brainstem, then into your medulla oblongata, then transferred into electrical impulse, so the synapses in your brain and the neurotransmitters can understand the words that I'm saying right now. That's how you're listening. That's not even all the details of how you're listening. There's over 44 sextillion neurotransmitters that are firing off in your brain right now. And your brain is understanding, well, how am I going to receive this information? Am I going to have a chemical response to this information that's going to create an emotion in me? Am I going to say something that will be off-putting? That you'll be like, oh my gosh, Pastor Chris just said that? And some of you might laugh. Some of you might just get really frustrated and mad. Some of you might think, man, Chris has no idea what he's talking about. But that's how powerful our words can be based off of what we're saying and what we're doing. There's so many different things that are correlating around who we are as humanity and give us the opportunity to understand God in a whole different level and a whole different light. Albert Einstein said, a man should look for what is and not what he thinks should be. A man should look for what is, not what he thinks should be. So I was working on a PhD in a field called astrobiology. Let's dive into astrobiology for a second. You might be wondering, exactly what is that? That's a weird field. Why would anybody do that? And I'll tell you right now. Astrobiology is the study of the parameters that have to happen for life to exist on any planet in the entire cosmos. So what actually has to take place for a single-cell organism, the basic of all life to exist, let alone an intelligent species that can create a global high-tech civilization such as humanity. So usually people would go and get this degree and they go work at NASA, or they go work at SpaceX, or they go to work at a place called SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or they work at NASA to go see the type of ecosystem and ecosphere that has to be created for astronauts to live on an exoplanet, a planet away from our Earth. I was getting it because this is like the liberal studies degree of the scientific fields, where you really dive in to almost every scientific discipline to really understand it. So I was looking at it more as a way for me to be able to communicate to people and talk about the greatness of God. And talk about, look at what God has given us. Look at all of these amazing benefactors that we could see that God has only given our eyes to see, because we're only a part of this generation right now. And I say generation as in the biblical term, everybody that's alive today right now. We have a very unique ability that we could see the universe. We could see biology. We could see geology. We could see these different things unlike any other previous generation before us. So I want us to put our mind in that frame set. Is what did God give us? What did God give us for us to be able to observe as a human species, as the human race? What do we get? What is it that we're able to have the very unique perspective to understand? What makes this so refreshing that us as a human species has the intelligence and the capabilities of seeing all of these different species and all of these different ways of life that are flourishing around us. So today we're going to dive into kind of the scale of the universe. How big is our God? How grander is our God? How marvelous is it? And what does that mean for us? What are those implications of what God has in store for our life? So if we were to think about our solar system and the size of our solar system, we all know that we have a home star, right? It's called the sun. We call it the sun. If we look at the sun, It's actually a very special star. A lot of people want to discredit our star and think that it's just an average star that is not very unique. In actuality, it's pretty unique. I don't know any other observable sentient being that's observing their star yet. But our star is a spectrum G2 yellow dwarf main sequence star. And it's a specific type of star that allows us to have an abundance of life and producing a great amount of energy for us to be able to be sustained. So to think about the size of our solar system and how big our solar system is, here's a little analogy that I didn't come up with, NASA did. So, but I like to hijack it because when I was about 8 years old is the first time I heard it, and it always has stuck with me. So if we were to take the sun and we're able to shrink it down into the size of a basketball, our Earth would essentially be this size. The diameter of about 1/2 millimeter. That's the size of the Earth if our sun was the size of a basketball. With that, how far back do you think the Earth would be? How far away do you think the Earth would be from the sun? I need a volunteer. Let's see. You know who would be great? Chad Harper. Get on up here, Harper. You're going to be the Earth today. So if you're the Earth, here, I'll be the sun. So I have to go over here. So I want you to stand on that little white piece of tape. Right there is where Mercury would be in this scale. So that means that Mercury would actually have an interplanetary lock. So it'd be too close to the home star that the orbit is interlocked and it cannot rotate. So one side is extremely hot and the other side is extremely cold. Can you go ahead and go back towards that door? You'll see a little black piece of tape on the ground. That right there is where Venus would be. That's where Venus would be. And so Venus can't habitat life because it has what's called a runaway greenhouse effect. It's way too hot for it to be able to sustain any type of intelligent life. If we were to have Harper go be where the Earth is, he would actually have to go stand in the middle of that field. You don't have to leave, Harper. Everybody, give Harper a round of applause. Thank you so much. So if the sun, here, I'll leave that right there so you guys can keep that reference point. Where the Earth would be is when you guys leave today, I went ahead and blew up an Earth and I put it in the middle of the field so you guys can actually see the distance that the Earth would be in this scalable model. For us to get to our closest neighbor on this scale, it would be Alpha Centauri, a binary star system. And Alpha Centauri is actually the same size as another basketball. So if we were going to keep this scale going, for us to be able to achieve getting to our closest neighbor, we would actually have to go. I'd have to give Harper the ball and be like, hey, Harper, here's another basketball. Get in your car. I need you to go ahead and head down, get on the 580. I need you to go over. I need you to get into Oakland. I need you to catch a flight, and I need you to go over to Dublin, Ireland, and go stand in the center because our closest neighbor is actually 4,300 miles away in this scalable model. That's how close our closest neighbor would be. Isn't that insane? It blows my mind. I hope everybody can actually see this. So this is our solar system. For us to understand really the size of the universe, you have to understand how we measure the universe. So how we measure the universe is something called AUs, astronomical units, and an astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to the Earth. So around 93 million miles, 92 to 93 million miles. If you're talking about what we have to use to actually use our yardstick on an intergalactical level, we have to use light speed. So that's insanely complicated when you start actually understanding it because we can't truly comprehend how fast light is. So light is traveling 186,282 miles per second. That's how fast light is going. That would be like you taking light and shooting it off the tip of my finger and it going east and going all the way around the Earth and coming back and hitting the left side of my finger and doing that 7 times in 1 second. 7 times in 1 second. That's how fast light would be. If we were to go to our closest neighbor, Alpha Centauri, light would be traveling. It would take it about 4.5 years. That blows my mind every time I think of that. Can you imagine going that fast, 7 times around the world in 1 second, but then you taking off from right here, exploding? Well, I don't know, I'd probably die. But if I was outside and I was able to take off, going that fast, for 4.5 years just to get to our closest neighbor, to get to Alpha Centauri. That's what it would take for us to be able to get to our closest neighbor in the local star group, right here. If we were to continue backing out, you would actually see this is the Milky Way galaxy. We actually live right here in between the Perseus and Sagittarius arms of our spiral galaxy. It's 100,000 light years across. That's how big our galaxy is 100,000 light years across. If you back out, you start seeing other galaxies. Our closest one is Andromeda. Eventually, it's going to run into us. Don't worry, we won't be here for it. At least I won't. I don't know if you guys might be. But you zoom out even more and you see the local star group. And then you see the Virgo supercluster. You zoom out even more and you start to see the entire observable universe. The Centaurus Great Wall. And this is called the cosmic web. So what's insane about this is that there's actually more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the planet. So you start thinking about that, and next time you're at the beach, pick up a big old handful of sand and just let the sand fall in between your fingers. There's more stars in the universe than all the beaches on the planet, all of the desert dunes, all of the sand on the entire planet. There's more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on our planet. What's crazier than that is there's more atoms in your finger than there are stars in the universe. That's crazy. That blows my mind. You start thinking about this and you start having to understand the order. You have to start understanding the magnificence of who God is and what God has done for us. Start zooming back in, going to the Virgo supercluster, and start figuring out exactly what has God done to set us apart, and why has he given us this enormous understanding, and why is it still so difficult for us to have faith when we have little problems? We have a very, very big God. We have a God that sees exactly where you're at. He sees exactly what you've been through. He's the God who has literally casted the entire universe, expanded the entire universe just by his voice, just by his words. There's a classification of star called a red supergiant. Here, I'm going to zoom into one right here so we can actually see it. It's right next to us, called Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse, but I like saying Beetlejuice. I just don't say it 3 times. So this classification of star is very unique because they're the largest stars in our entire universe. What's crazy, though, is these type of stars are what burn the hottest types of elements. So they are the only type of stars that burn iron and nickel and cobalt. These are the only ways that we get these in our universe. But what happens is these stars don't actually live that long. And what happens is they're so large that their gravitational pull makes them implode on themselves, creating an explosion beyond comprehension in the form of what's called a supernova. And these explosions are so big that they actually create a hole in the space-time continuum, and that's how we get black holes. But when they explode, they launch all of these elements all throughout the universe. Our sun doesn't produce heavy metals. So it's very interesting that if you think about it, why in the world do we live on a planet that is abundant with all of these heavy metals that our solar system doesn't even produce? How did it just so happen that we live on a planet that is abundant in all these things? Moreover, how in the world do we have iron in our body? If you don't have iron in your body, you become anemic. If I were to take all of the iron out of your body, Pastor Josh, it would create a 3.5-inch iron nail. That's how much iron you have in your body. This is iron right here in my hand. This came from a red supergiant star. That's the only place it came from. And yet you have that body, you have that iron in your body right now. How in the world does that happen? From a naturalistic point of view, there is no answer. There is no answer how that takes place. How does that happen in your body? How do you get inorganic material to become not only necessary, but vital for your existence? Well, I can tell you in the Bible, it's pretty clear that when God was forming us and when he was forming and creating mankind, it was the only thing that he didn't speak into existence. No, it became a very intimate moment where God literally was replicating himself. He was creating us for him, to have relationship with him. That God actually got down into the dirt. He got down into the ground. He used elements that were forged millions upon billions of years ago to be able to formulate this man and breathe the breath of life into him. To be able to be part and see what his ultimate creation was. To create the children of the Most High, which is you and I. That's very unique. The God that was able to cast the entire universe into motion is the same God that knows exactly what you're going through today. It's the same God that knows exactly what you've been through and knows exactly what you're going to go through. The same God that's holding the entire cosmos in his hand is also knowing exactly the troubles that you face this morning. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I'm going to finish with this one right here. There's a galaxy. We don't have time for the moon. This right here is called the Grand Design Galaxy. It's my favorite galaxy because when the Hubble actually took this, now we have a much better telescope. But at the time, the Hubble was considered the greatest interstellar telescope that we have. It gave us a top-down view of a spiral galaxy. And so it's M83, and it's a spiral galaxy. It's also known as the Grand Design Galaxy. When they took the Hubble and they focused it on the center of this galaxy, they waited till the images came back. And when the images came back, it showed this. At the center of the Grand Design, that's 44 million light years away. So it happened 44 million years ago. The images are just now getting to us. The light is just now getting to our eyes. Is embedded in the Grand Design a cross. Isn't that absolutely incredible? You think about that, and you think about what God has put into motion, that the Savior of the entire universe, the Creator that stepped into creation, put a pivotal marker for our eyes to see in the cosmos. A cross, a symbol of a cross, a symbol of persecution, a symbol of redemption, a symbol of saving grace. The same God that stretched out his arms into the entire universe took those same arms and were nailed to a piece of his creation for you to have everlasting life. That's the reason why he did all of this. That's the exact reason why he did the cosmos. That's the exact reason why it took so long in preparation for you to be here right now. I had a student one time, was like, Mr. Monty, that's what they called me. They were Mr. Monty. If God's so great and so grand, why did it take him so long to create Earth? Like 13.7 billion years, which we could actually talk about that. It's actually a perspective of time, but it's not for today. But 13.7 years, billion years, think about that. When you're getting married, you put forth so much time into one moment. You put all this energy, all this resource. You call so many people. You get all these logistics to take place for this one moment in time, and then it's gone. But there's so much leading up to that moment for the bride, for the groom to have their moment. That's kind of what God did for us. He put forth so much in order, so many things for this exact moment, for him to have relationship with you, for him to know you and for you to know him. That's the whole reason for all of this. The whole reason for all of this is specifically for you. For the created to have relationship with the Creator, for the love of God to be able to be a part of your life, for the grace and the peace that transcends all understanding to be a part of your daily life. Know that you have a God that is very big. He's very powerful. He knows you by name, and he loves you more than you could ever possibly imagine. Colossians 1:20 says, through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. And finally, on the last slide I have, the heavens are declaring the glory of God, and the expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day after day pours forth speech, and night after night reveals knowledge. We're unique, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a God that not only is miraculous, not only is marvelous, not only is the ultimate artist and designer, but he is a God that has given it all and sacrificed it all for your life, for you to come into relationship with him.